In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is...
My brother hid my wife's infidelity for 5 years, and when he found out that I spoke to his wife, he attacked me in public. The most painful family betrayal. I never thought I would be telling this story. A story that I still find difficult to fully comprehend. My life, which was once so stable and predictable, has fallen apart in ways I could never have imagined. I am 38 years old and have been married to Sarah for 12 years. Together we have 2 children, Emily, 10, and Max, 8. I always believed we had a good marriage. Of course, like any couple, we had our occasional arguments, but on the whole, I thought we were happy. At least I was. My brother Tom and I have always been very close. He is 42 years older than me and has been married to Linda, his high school sweetheart, for 15 years. They have a daughter, Sophie, who is 13. Tom and I grew up in a close-knit family where loyalty meant everything. We were best friends, confidants, and each other's unconditional support. But it wasn't just the 2 of us. Our families were inseparable too. Our children grew up playing together. We celebrated parties and birthdays as one big family. Everything seemed perfect. Looking back, perhaps that was precisely the problem. Things seemed too perfect. I was so focused on my own life and on maintaining that image of a happy family that I didn't notice the cracks that were beginning to form. I didn't realize that my wife was keeping a secret from me, and even worse, I didn't realize that my brother knew about it too. Everything fell apart during a family event, my nephew's birthday. It was one of those quiet, carefree days that we always enjoyed. The children were running around the patio playing while the adults shared drinks and conversation. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I noticed Sarah and Tom talking in a corner. At first, I didn't think anything of it. They had always gotten along well. Why wouldn't they? We were like one big, happy family, right? But later that day, as I passed them on my way to the kitchen to get more drinks, I heard something that made my heart stop. Sarah was whispering something to Tom. Her voice was low but urgent. The words weren't clear at first, but as I got closer, I caught the end of the conversation. Sarah was talking about an affair. Her affair. I was transfixed. My ears began to ring as I tried to process what I had just heard. There was no possible mistake. Sarah was not talking about someone else's affair. She was talking about hers. I stood there, hiding behind the doorframe, trying to catch my breath. How long had this been going on for? Who else knew about it? Why was she telling my brother? The more I listened, the more the awful truth was revealed. This was not a recent affair or a one-time mistake. No, this had been going on for 5 years. 5 years of lies. 5 years of betrayal. And worst of all, Tom knew. He had known all along. When I finally collected myself and returned to the room, I couldn't look at either of them. I felt like my world had been shattered. Every memory with Sarah, every moment we'd shared over the last 5 years now felt tainted. But I didn't confront them straight away. I needed to think. I needed to process everything. So I walked away, found a quiet place away from the party, and tried to make sense of what I'd just discovered. The betrayal was too much to bear. I couldn't believe Sarah would do this to me. But what really hurt me deeply was Tom's role in all this. My own brother, my closest confidant, had kept this secret for 5 years. He had lied to my face countless times. He had let me believe that everything was fine, that my marriage was solid. And he knew the truth all along. How could he justify that? I confronted them later that night. I couldn't hold back any longer. I needed answers. Sarah broke down almost immediately, sobbing as she confessed everything. She said it started out as a mistake, just one night that got out of control. She claimed she was too scared to tell me, that she didn't want to hurt me or our children. She had confided in Tom thinking he would help her sort things out. But instead, they both chose to keep me in the dark. They thought they were protecting me. Tom even had the audacity to say that he was trying to save the family, and that if I found out, everything would be destroyed. But the truth is that he had already destroyed everything. In trying to protect me, he had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The more they talked, the angrier I got. I didn't care about their excuses. Sarah could have confessed years ago, and Tom, my own brother, should have told me the truth the moment he found out. He wasn't protecting me, he was protecting her. And in doing so, he destroyed the trust I had in both of them. I couldn't look at Sarah again. Her mere presence made me feel sick. I told her I couldn't continue with her. There was no way I could forgive her for what she had done. The only reason I would be around her would be for Emily and Max. I made it clear that divorce was the only option. The next day, I contacted a lawyer and started the process. I couldn't live a lie anymore. Things escalated quickly from there. The consequences were not limited to Sarah and me. Linda, Tom's wife, overheard part of our confrontation. At first, she didn't understand what was happening, but when I explained everything to her, she was furious. She couldn't believe that Tom had kept such a big secret, not only from me, but also from her. She too felt betrayed because her husband had been complicit in hiding Sarah's infidelity for years. It wasn't long before she told Tom she wanted a separation. She couldn't trust him anymore. If he could keep something like that a secret, who knows what else he might be hiding? Tom's world began to fall apart, just as mine had. He thought he was saving the family, but instead, he had destroyed his own marriage in the process. Linda packed her bags and moved in with Sophie. I think that was the moment when Tom realized how badly he had ruined things. But instead of admitting his mistakes, Tom came to me. He had the audacity to ask me for help. He called me saying that I owed him a favor for keeping Sarah's secret, that he had done it to protect me and my children. He begged me to talk to Linda, to convince her to give him another chance. He thought that because I was his brother, I should help him fix his marriage. But from my perspective, he had made his choices, and now he was paying the price for them. I didn't owe him anything. If anything, he owed me for the years of lies and betrayal. I told him that clearly. I told him that he had dug his own grave and that he needed to deal with the consequences of his actions. I had my own mess to sort out, and I wasn't going to spend any more time or energy on his problems. I am torn. On the one hand, Tom is my brother, and despite everything, I still care about him. On the other hand, I feel that he brought this result upon himself. His decision to hide Sarah's infidelity was wrong at best and a complete betrayal of my trust at worst. So now I ask myself, am I wrong for not wanting to help Tom? Should I just let him deal with the consequences of his actions? Or do I owe it to him as his brother to try to help him save his marriage, even though he played a major part in almost destroying mine? Am I the villain for refusing to help my brother after he hid my wife's infidelity for 5 years? Honestly, I don't know what to do. My whole world has been turned upside down, and I'm struggling to find stability. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. Hello, everyone. After posting my original story, I took some time to gather my thoughts, but honestly, the chaos didn't calm down as quickly as I had hoped. Sarah and I had already agreed to proceed with the divorce. I knew there was no going back after what had happened. I packed my things and moved into a small apartment nearby, not far from where we used to live. My priority above all else was the children. Emily and Max were my main concern throughout this whole ordeal. I wanted to make sure that their lives remained as stable as possible, despite everything that was happening between Sarah and I. The divorce process moved quickly, or so it felt. We both agreed we wanted to move on, but Sarah, despite everything, kept apologizing. Her words seemed empty to me now. How many times can someone say I'm sorry before it loses all meaning? She suggested therapy, but I knew that wasn't what I needed. I didn't even think it could help us. The damage was already done. You can't recover from a betrayal like that over 5 years. Not from my perspective, at least. I didn't even have the energy to be angry. I was just finished. While I was dealing with the logistics of separating our lives, Tom wouldn't stop contacting me. Every few days I would get a call, a text message, or even an unexpected visit from him. He was desperate, begging me to help him patch things up with Linda. He really believed that if I talked to her and explained why I had kept Sarah's infidelity a secret, she might forgive him. I found it disconcerting that he thought I would intervene after everything he had done. He was no longer just my brother. He was part of the reason my marriage had imploded. The more he asked me for help, the more I distanced myself from him. Each message or plea only reminded me of how he had betrayed me for 5 long years. He had helped destroy my marriage by keeping Sarah's secret, and now he expected me to help him fix his. No, I couldn't get involved. It wasn't my responsibility to clean up his mess. However, as time went by, I couldn't stop thinking about Linda. She had been taken by surprise, just like me. I hadn't spoken to her since the initial fallout, and I was starting to feel some guilt. One night, after a particularly difficult day, I decided to contact her. I sent her a simple message asking how she was. Honestly, I wasn't expecting much of a response. I thought she would be as overwhelmed with everything as I was, but to my surprise, she replied quickly, and we ended up having a long phone conversation. That conversation was revealing, to say the least. Linda told me things I didn't know, things that made me see how deep Tom's deception had gone. not only towards me, but also towards her. She explained that discovering Sarah's infidelity was simply the last straw, but that in reality, their marriage had been falling apart for years. Tom had become increasingly secretive. He would stay out late and give vague explanations about where he had been. Every time Linda asked, he would become defensive, almost angry, as if she had no right to question him. His phone was always in his hand, with the screen facing down, and he would leave the room every time he had to take a call. Linda had tried to ignore it at first, but after a while, it became too obvious to ignore. What really affected her was how absent Tom had become in their family life. She missed important moments, birthdays, Sophie's school events, and even their anniversary. Linda told me that Sophie, who had always been close to her father, began to notice the distance. Sophie once asked Linda if her dad still loved them, and that broke Linda's heart. She had been trying so hard to keep her family together, but when her own daughter starts to question her father's love, it's hard to ignore the problems. Linda had long suspected as much, but she wanted to believe that Tom was just going through something temporary, maybe a rough patch. She hoped things would improve, but when she discovered that he had hidden Sarah's infidelity, everything fell into place for her. It was no longer just about the betrayal of me. It was about Tom and the years of deceit, the lies, the emotional distance. Keeping that secret was the final straw, but it was far from the only problem. As we talked, Linda admitted that she had been considering separating from Tom for some time. She hadn't told anyone, not even her closest friends, but the emotional distance between them had been growing for years. She had tried to make it work for Sophie's sake, but she was exhausted, tired of trying to keep a marriage together when Tom seemed to have withdrawn completely. The constant lies, the defensiveness, and now this final betrayal were too much for her. Finding out that he had been complicit in covering up Sarah's infidelity had pushed her over the edge. She couldn't take it anymore. She was ready to walk away for good. By the end of our conversation, it was clear that Linda had finished with Tom, and frankly, I couldn't blame her. She wasn't angry in a loud, dramatic way. She was just tired. Tired of fighting for a marriage that had already fallen apart. Keeping Sarah's infidelity a secret wasn't just a singular act of betrayal. It was the tipping point after years of dishonesty and emotional neglect. Hearing all this from Linda made me realize how deep Tom's actions had gone. It wasn't just about me or Sarah. It was about years of deceit that had fractured not only my marriage but also his. Tom had lost more than just my trust. He had also lost the trust of his wife and daughter. I had spent so long trying to protect myself, as he put it, that I hadn't even noticed that his own marriage was falling apart. After that call, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't alone in this mess. Linda had also been taken by surprise. And although it didn't make my situation any easier, it did give me some perspective. Tom's betrayal went much deeper than I had initially realized. He hadn't just failed me. He had failed Linda, Sophie, and himself. In the days that followed, I stopped responding to Tom's pleas for help. I knew there was nothing I could do for him. He had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. I wasn't going to step in and try to fix his marriage, not when he had played such a big part in destroying mine. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions, just as I had had to. Now, I'm focusing on what's next for me and my children. The divorce process is moving forward, and I'm trying to create a new sense of normality for Emily and Max. They've been through enough, and my priority is to make sure they feel loved and supported through all of this. As for Tom, I don't know what will happen with him and Linda. The last I heard, she was still living with her parents and consulting a lawyer, so it seems their separation is inevitable. Looking back, I realized that this whole situation has been a wake-up call. Betrayal doesn't always come from the places we expect, and sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who cause the most damage. But I've learned that you can't carry someone else's mistakes on your shoulders. Tom made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. Update 2. A few days have passed since my conversation with Linda, and things seem to have calmed down, at least on the surface. Tom had finally stopped bombarding me with calls and messages, and for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I could breathe. With the divorce proceedings well underway, I was focusing my energy on the children, trying to make sure they felt as normal as possible in the midst of all this chaos. Sarah and I had been alternating weeks with them, and although it was difficult not to see Emily and Max every day, I knew I needed to make the most of the time I had with them. This weekend, I brought them to my apartment for a few days. It wasn't very big, but it was our home now, and I wanted to make sure the kids felt comfortable. We spent the day doing simple things, watching movies, playing board games, and eating takeaway food, just enjoying being together. After weeks of turmoil, it felt good to have moments of peace, even if they were fleeting. I was trying to get back into a routine, trying to create some kind of normality for the children, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. I never would have expected the events that unfolded. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I had left the children at home while I rushed to the grocery store. I was walking through the aisles, minding my own business, when I heard someone call my name. I turned around, and, to my surprise, there was Tom. His face was red, and he was walking towards me with an angry expression. Before I could even process what was happening, he was in front of me, shouting at me in the middle of the store. He started ranting about how he could understand that I didn't want to help him, but that now I was stabbing him in the back by talking to Linda. At first, I was taken aback. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I asked him what he meant, trying to remain calm even though we were starting to attract attention. People were turning their heads, watching the scene. He continued to shout at me, insisting that I knew exactly what he was talking about. He accused me of talking to Linda behind his back and asked if I thought he didn't know what I was doing. He was confused and angry at the same time. I had simply checked how Linda was doing, nothing more. What did he expect? She was going through the same thing as me. I said to him, "You dug your own grave, Tom. You brought this on yourself." Hearing that only seemed to enrage him more. He repeated his old excuse that he did what he had to do. He added that I had always been the favorite, the model child, but that he had to step in to protect the family. And according to him, now I was turning around and destroying his. I could feel my patience running out. This was the same twisted logic he had been using for weeks to justify his actions. I said to him directly, "You didn't protect anyone. You lied, you kept secrets, you destroyed 2 families. Now you're angry because you're facing the consequences." I thought that would be the end of it, that he would finally walk away, but I was wrong. Tom completely lost control. Without warning, he lunged at me, throwing a punch that landed straight on my jaw. I staggered back, dazed before I could react. He was on top of me, pushing and wildly throwing punches. The grocery bags I was holding flew off, scattering food across the floor as I tried to defend myself. People started to scream, and in the chaos, I could hear someone calling for help. Several passers-by came running over and managed to get Tom off me, dragging him backwards as I tried to get to my feet. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking with adrenaline. A shop employee had called the police, and before I knew it, officers were on the scene. Tom was still furious, being held back by 2 other men who had stepped in to stop the fight. His eyes seemed unfocused, as if he didn't even understand what he had just done. I was furious. But more than that, I was exhausted. I couldn't believe the situation had reached this point. My own brother attacking me in public like a madman. The police assessed the situation, trying to understand what had happened. I didn't want to make a big deal out of this. The last thing I needed was more drama, especially with everything that was going on with the divorce. The children had already been through enough, and the idea of dragging them through a legal problem involving their uncle was the last thing I wanted. So when the officers asked if I wanted to press charges, I said no, I just wanted this to be over. I asked the officers to make sure Tom knew he couldn't come near me again. I made it clear that I didn't want to see him, talk to him, or hear from him ever again. They gave him a stern warning and told him he was lucky I wasn't pressing charges. After that, Tom was escorted out of the store, still muttering angrily. I stood there for a moment trying to process what had just happened. I couldn't believe how far things had escalated. Just a few months ago, we were 2 brothers living our lives, our families intertwined, celebrating birthdays and holidays together. Now we were nothing more than strangers, or worse, enemies. I collected what was left of my shopping and headed home, still in shock. When I walked through the door, the children immediately sensed that something was wrong. I did my best to hide it, to put on a brave face, but they knew me too well. Emily especially had that worried look on her face, as if she could sense that something was not right, but I forced a smile and nodded to reassure her. I spent the rest of the night trying to get what had happened out of my mind, but it remained there. I couldn't believe that Tom had crossed that line. I had expected anger, frustration, maybe even some shouting, but physically attacking me was a new low. It made me realize how far things had really gone. The next day, I woke up to an avalanche of text messages from Sarah. Apparently, Tom had told her everything, distorting the story to make it look like I had been the one to provoke him. She wanted to know why I had escalated things and how it had got so out of hand. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Tom was trying to play the victim, and Sarah was buying it. It was unbelievable. I sent her a quick reply explaining what had really happened, but I kept it brief. I had no interest in getting into a back and forth about this. If she wanted to believe Tom, that was her problem. A few days later, I got a call from Linda. She had heard about the altercation and wanted to know how I was. She sounded exhausted, as if all this was taking its toll on her too. We talked for a while, and she confirmed what I already suspected. Tom was in a downward spiral. His behavior had become more erratic. Since our lives began to fall apart, he had been lashing out at everyone around him, desperate to find someone to blame for the mess he had created. But the more he lashed out, the more isolated he became. Linda told me that she was moving forward with the divorce. For her, there was no going back. She had spoken to a lawyer and was preparing to file the papers. Sophie, her daughter, was staying with her for the time being, and Linda was doing everything she could to protect her from the worst. But even Sophie had begun to notice how out of control her father had become. Linda mentioned that Sophie had asked about the fight in the shop, having heard something about it. It pained me to think about how all this was affecting the children, especially Sophie. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this mess. After the call with Linda, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I was relieved that she was taking steps to get away from Tom, but sad for the family that had been torn apart in the process. This was not how things were supposed to end for any of us. As for Tom, I hadn't heard from him since the incident at the grocery store, and I hoped it would stay that way. He had crossed a line that could not be erased. He had no interest in repairing our relationship. There was too much damage, too much betrayal, and now violence. Whatever fraternal bond we once had vanished, replaced by a cold, hard distance that I didn't think could ever be bridged. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on moving forward. The divorce was still in progress, but I was doing my best to stay strong for the children. Emily and Max deserved a father who was present and stable, someone they could trust. That's what I was determined to be for them, no matter what else was going on around me. Tom had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. As for me, I was done looking back. It was time to move forward, to rebuild my life and focus on the people who mattered most, my children. Update 3. Hello, everyone. First, I want to sincerely thank you for your comments, support, and advice throughout this difficult experience. Believe me, I have read every single one of them, and they have helped me more than I can express. It's been several days since the altercation with Tom, and I've been doing my best to pretend it never happened. But no matter how hard I try to put it behind me, it's hard to ignore the reality that my own brother attacked me in public. It's one of those moments that stays with you, no matter how much you wish you could forget it. My parents found out about what happened between Tom and I, and they are very disappointed in him. They are sad and hurt, which is understandable. I mean, who wouldn't be? Both of their children are now going through divorces for different reasons, and I know this has had a big impact on them too. I hadn't really considered how much all this must have affected them until now. I plan to visit them soon with my children. As for Sarah and I, we have managed to reach an agreement regarding the children. We have had to focus on making sure that Emily and Max are well. That has been my priority above everything else at the moment. The children are staying with me. Sarah wanted to take them away, but Emily and Max insisted that they wanted to stay at my house for now. I think they feel safer here, probably because I've been more present these last few weeks, trying to rebuild the trust that was broken when all this started. It's not that Sarah isn't trying. She's been trying hard, but I think the children are still processing everything that's happened. They have witnessed our arguments, they know about the divorce, and they are aware that things are changing. I have been honest with them in a way that is appropriate for their age, explaining that their mom and I are going through some difficulties, but that we both love them more than anything. Even so, it is a lot for them to handle. My daughter, Emily especially, has been more withdrawn lately. She is quieter, more introspective. She doesn't say much, but I can tell she is struggling to understand all of this. Max, on the other hand, seems to be coping by distracting himself with his video games and friends from school. He has always been more resilient, but even he has moments when he wonders why things can't just go back to the way they were before. We've set up a schedule now. For the next few months, the children will stay with me during the week, and Sarah will have them at the weekends. We both agree that this is the best arrangement, at least for now. It gives the children some stability and allows me to be more involved in their daily lives. Some days, I feel like I can barely stand up, but I know I have to keep going strong for them. My parents are hoping that Tom and I will reconcile, but I don't know if that's possible. They've tried to mediate, suggesting we sit down and talk things through, but I'm not ready for that. Not after everything that's happened. I'm still dealing with my own pain and anger, and the idea of facing Tom again, of pretending we can just talk and sort things out, feels impossible. In the meantime, I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. I've spent more time with friends, reconnecting with people I had drifted away from during the worst of the chaos. It's been nice to have some normality again, even if it's in small doses. But every time I think I'm moving forward, something sets me back. The divorce still looms over everything, and although Sarah and I are in agreement regarding the children, the legal side of things is complicated. We are still working out the details, dividing assets, and deciding who gets what. It's exhausting, both mentally and emotionally. Some days I feel like I'm drowning in paperwork and legal terminology, and it's hard to keep my head above water. I guess that's where I am now, just trying to take things one day at a time. There are still many unanswered questions and many unresolved feelings. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm starting to see a way forward. It's not going to be easy, and I know there will be more obstacles along the way, but at least now I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. And for that, I am grateful.